All right, let's jump right into a really interesting one. There's this idea out there, and it seems to make a lot of sense that if New Zealand went totally cashless, the government would save a ton of money. But as we're about to see, what seems like common sense is actually a fascinating fiscal paradox. So this is the question at the heart of it all, right? You got to think, without all the printing and handling of notes and coins, the government's budget would get a pretty nice boost. It just feels obvious. But is it really that simple?
I mean, the logic is super appealing. You just stop printing money, stop minting coins, and boom, all the costs of making it, moving it, and managing it just disappear. The savings must be huge, and honestly, it's a very easy story to buy into.
And hey, to be fair, there are some real savings. We're talking an estimated $58 million every single year that the Reserve Bank of New Zealand would save on just operational stuff. That's not nothing, and it kind of seems to prove the point. So, case closed? Well, not so fast. Because this, right here, is where the whole story gets turned on its head. It turns out that physical cash isn't just an expense line on a budget. It's actually a massive, and I mean massive, source of profit for the government. Let's break down how that actually works. Okay, so there's this kind of technical sounding word, but stick with me because it's the key to this whole thing, seigniorage. Basically, when the Reserve Bank prints a fresh $20 bill and puts it out into the world, it gets $20 worth of secure financial assets back in return. Then it earns interest on those assets. And that interest, that's pure profit for the government. So just how much are we talking about here? Well, in the last financial year alone, that seigniorage profit brought in a staggering $466 million. All of a sudden, that $58 million in savings, I mean, it's practically pocket change compared to the almost $500 million in pure revenue that would just vanish.
But wait, the financial hit doesn't even stop there with the lost revenue. Because here's the thing, you can't just flip a switch and get rid of cash. The replacement system, an official digital dollar, has to be built from the ground up. And yeah, that comes with its own brand new and very steep price tag.
Just look at the difference here. Running the physical cash system we have now costs about $58 million a year. The Treasury's recommendation for a new digital system, that's going to cost, on average, $144 million per year. That is more than double the costs, and that's before we even factor in that giant pile of lost profit we just talked about. And a huge chunk of that new cost, it's security. Think about it. A single centralized digital currency is like putting a giant glowing bullseye on the country's entire financial system for every hacker on the planet. We already know New Zealand's financial sector shells out over $140 million a year just on cyber defense. To build and protect a national digital currency would be a whole different ballgame. Okay, so if the government is set to lose a fortune, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who's actually winning here? If the public's wallet is getting lighter, someone else's must be getting heavier. Let's, follow the money. And what do you know? It turns out the private sector could do very, very well. Commercial banks could save over $100 million a year just by not having to deal with physical cash. Small businesses could cut down on labor and security costs. Pretty much every business out there could see a benefit. I mean, just let this number sink in for a second. $1 billion. That's what New Zealand businesses are forking over every single year in fees to private companies just to process digital payments. If a new public system forced more competition and drove those fees down, the savings for private businesses would be absolutely enormous. All right, so we've looked at the savings, the massive lost revenue, the expensive new costs, and who stands to make a buck. It is time to put all the pieces together and do the final math on the New Zealand government's budget.
And this table, man, it just lays it all out with some brutal clarity. You start in the green with 58 million saved. Nice. But then you subtract 466 million in lost profit. Ouch. And then you subtract another 144 million every year for the new digital system. The math just doesn't lie.
And so there you have it. The paradox is explained. That initial common sense idea that going cashless is a money saver for the government, it's just flat out wrong. Once you account for the hidden profits of cash in the huge new costs of a digital alternative, the result is a pretty significant net loss for the public. And that really just leaves us with one final big question to chew on.
If a totally cashless society means a major financial hit for the government and its taxpayers, but it's a potential jackpot for private banks and businesses, who is this change really for? Definitely something worth thinking about.